And
Yep.
if you just double check the channel as well, we are.
Well, it says YouTube
Oh.
on the top, but so let me just turn the phone there. Hold on.
So, hello, YouTube, if you're watching. Thank you very much for tuning in. We are the Everything F1 team. We're just going to do our race review podcast recording for obviously the Australian Grand Prix that we've just had and just watched and witnessed. And then we're going to be having a look to the future, as in look to the weekend in China itself, and giving you our race predictions for the weekend. So, thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and obviously get all of our latest and live podcasts as soon as they drop on the channel. Thank you. Wow, what a weekend. 2025 F1 is back. And with tears, tantrums, torrential rain, and team orders, we've got a lot to digest as we go through the Australia review. My name's James Tiller. I'm here to host the podcast today. Alongside me from the Everything F1 team, we've got Coops. Hi, Coops. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much. Uh, I'm just happy that F1's back.
Yes. Not at 4 o'clock in the morning, but yes. No, it's fine.
Yeah, it certainly was a wake-up call to be had. But do you know what? I'm happy it's back in Australia to start. I think a lot of people are happy that it's back in Australia to start the season. It just feels right. It feels like it should be there. The atmosphere was fantastic, what I could see on TV screens. And just, I was just happy to be up, even though it was 4 o'clock in the morning. Even though, the time was just terrible for us, but it gives us an insight into what the Australians have to put up with day in, day out when they're watching Formula One. So fair play to you. Fair dinkum to you, as they would say. Before we get into digest the podcast. Before we get into digest the Formula One race in Australia, we are Everything F1. You can find us on all our social platforms. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, obviously, and you can hit the subscribe button on all of those to get everything to basically join the community and join the conversation that we have on all of those channels. We're also on the website one.com. And we'd love it if you'd also hit the subscribe button on your favorite pod streaming service to get all of our latest podcasts in your earlobes as soon as they drop. We are also teamed up with the raceworks.com. They are a merchandise provider for merchandise from the whole grid, from Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, you name it. They've got merchandise from all teams, and you can get a discount on the site using the code EF1 at checkout. That'll give you a 10% discount and also help us and support us throughout the season too, so we can bring you more excellent content throughout the season. Okay, let's delve into the Australian Grand Prix first. And as not so secret McLaren fans, I'm sure there was a smile beaming from ear to ear as we realised that the McLaren is the fastest car on the grid. And Lando Norris himself actually claimed the first race win of the season in excellent manner, in a cool, calm, collected way, proving that he has what it takes when the time comes. Coops, what can you say about Lando Norris, McLaren, and obviously the first race of the season in Australia?
Yeah, pretty clear that they're the team to beat from what we can see. Almost faultless for Lando and a wee whoopsie, which became a bigger whoopsie for Piastri. I'm sure we'll discuss that further. But other than that, pole position, first place, kept first all the way through, even after the wee trip off onto the grass. And Banksy's 25 points, and is the first driver in nearly 2 years, I think, 2.5 years, that's not Max Verstappen to be leading the Drivers' Championship. So,
Yeah, it's fantastic. As I say, we're not so secret McLaren fans. We do like to try and stay as unbiased as possible, but obviously we brought our biases into our life of F1 kind of journalism. So it's very, very hard to kind of completely lose that. We're always going to have a very slight kind of, soft spot for them. But they just did a fantastic job, and it's nice to see that they've got the fastest car, and it was considerably faster from what I can work out. they dropped Max Verstappen quite quickly, even though he overtook Oscar Piastri quite early on in the race. That was after 14 laps. He'd lost that position back to Oscar, and they'd drawn out quite a substantial gap in that meantime in the intervening laps. So it's a quick car, very fast. Um, Even though it was torrential rain and there was mixed conditions, they still were able to control the race from the front and pretty much dominate. Obviously, barring the mishap from the two drivers at the same corner, where Lando caught it in time. Oscar Piastri unfortunately didn't catch it and probably put a bit too much power down when trying to rejoin the track and beached himself. Well, grassed himself. What would you say? It's not beached, is it, when it's grass? But you know what I mean. He
Yes.
kind of took it off track and wasn't able to get it out of the grass very quickly. And I'm sure the Australian curse is alive and well, and he's ruining his poor, I don't know, poor luck as it was for the race in Australia. What can you say about Oscar Piastri?
Up until that point, it's pretty faultless from him too.
Mm,
Unfortunately for both the McLaren pair, they reached the part of the track that was the wettest, the first. And generally speaking, that's the problem. They were the first
mm,
ones to reach it. Both of them went off. Unfortunately for Oscar, even further off the road, which meant that he just had the wrong angle coming back on and lost the traction. As you say, he had to use reverse to find the escape road to get back on. Got himself a couple of points at the end. With a pretty spectacular pass on Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari, actually.
yeah.
Just swing it around the outside. I think it was turn 9. I think it was. Wired it around the outside and stuck his car in to get a couple of points. So, I mean, he'll be disappointed, but then on the other side, to kind of temper the disappointment, he knows he's got a good car and he's going to be up the front with Lando for most of the season. So there'll be chances to redeem it. And I'm sure Lando's going to make a wee mistake or something's going to happen to Lando at some point in the season to let him come back. We would have, he should have been on the podium at Australia. But, this is what happens in sport, especially in Formula One. Things that should happen don't always happen. So, on
Yeah,
to the
that's
next.
absolutely right. Damage limitations from Oscar for the McLaren team. That they're obviously leading the Constructors' Championship and the Drivers' Championship. I want to talk about Lando's kind of maturity. And he's in interviews after the race, he said, I've learned a lot from my previous mistakes, from the previous seasons. I know what I need to do. And he really did show that in the race. And even on the radio, the radio calls from the pit wall saying, Lando, trust the car. The car's got what it needs. Don't overdrive it. And yeah, he didn't overdrive it. He just kept a level head, and that's consistently continuing forward if he wants to win the championship. My hope is maybe we get a good 5 or 6 races before the others catch up. From a completely biased perspective, that is, and we get to bank a few points for McLaren before the real competition starts later in the year. And let's just hope that is the case as we move forward. If you're a McLaren fan, you won't be thinking that if you're a Red Bull fan, Ferrari fan, or even a Mercedes fan. But they were all very close this weekend in terms of performance and speed. And it was really, really interesting, obviously, to see the pecking order and how it unfolded, albeit in those mixed conditions. Let's talk about the second place driver, which was none other than Max Verstappen, the actual reigning world champion. Now, that really was a world championship drive as well. Still very competitive, out driving that car. We say it year in, year out, show in, show out. He just overdrives. He just, outperforms all the other drivers in the opposing Red Bull car and just shows that he is in a class of one. Were you impressed with Max Verstappen's racing this weekend?
I mean, he did exactly what he had to do with the car he had. I mean, there's no illusion. They know that Red Bull isn't going to be competing against McLaren at the moment. So Max did what he had to do and stay as close as he could to the McLarens and got himself up onto the podium. I mean, he's always going to be there or thereabouts. I'm sure
Mm.
that he's going to take a couple of wins throughout the season in the Formula One world will probably go mental if he gets a couple in a row and think, oh, there's McLaren's bubble burst. But we know it's going to be more competitive than last couple of years. They've not quite got the edge on the other teams. So,
Mm.
but it was a good performance, a very Max-esque performance. Sure. Obviously,
Yeah,
that's a hard
absolutely.
thing for me to say, but yeah, that's what it was.
He's very good in the wet. He's proven that he's very good in the wet. Just look at Brazil, from 17th to first or whatever that we had just this past season. He's a fantastic racing driver. He continues to prove that he's a fantastic racing driver. And as I say, he's outperforming the car. And then if you look at his teammate, you can see maybe not where the car is necessarily because I've forgotten his name.
Liam Lawson.
Liam Lawson. Liam Lawson did have a terrible weekend, unfortunately. So it's not really a benchmark of how well the car's doing, but unfortunately how poorly Lawson handled the car this weekend. How do you feel about Lawson? And he's getting already pressure from Helmut Marko. There's already kind of the twitchy kind of fingers and ready to pull the rug from underneath Lawson's feet. Even this early in his racing career, is that a good thing, bad thing? What do you think about that?
Helmut Marko needs to shut up and go to a wee island to retire. I just don't take any weight or any credence to anything that man says anymore. I think he's came out and said that Isaac Hadjar's emotions in the paddock with Anthony Hamilton was a wee bit embarrassing. Apparently, he said that just needs to get in the bin.
Mm.
That's ridiculous kind of attitude, and you know. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of thing for the drivers at Red Bull because that's a historical thing, but I wouldn't take it as a gospel from him. Uh, the Liam Lawson's race was ruined because they put a different setup in the car. They put too much wing in the car. The car was dreadfully slow, especially in the straights, and he couldn't progress up the order. That's nothing to do with Lawson and his talent. That's a team decision. That was a strategy decision they got wrong. So move on to the next. Don't make that mistake again.
Yeah, we've seen seasoned professionals go off in formation laps. It's while he probably felt embarrassed because this was his big first race in F1. He should get over that because, I mean, even the conditions were just terrible, and even seasoned veterans like Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso couldn't keep their cars on the track. Admittedly, this was during the race, so it is very slightly different, but he shouldn't be too downhearted. I think he looked very promising through free practice, very promising in qualifying. I think he's got the potential to be quite a good racer in Formula One. He just needs to have that belief and not let this uh, silly little mistake uh, put him, knock him down and keep him down, to be fair, because I think, given time, given a bit of patience with him and just working through everything he knows as he's learned through F2 and all the other prior formulas, that he is a good racer, and I think he's got a lot to prove, and I think he will do so as the season progresses. The Mercedes this weekend was also fairly quick. Now, we didn't see much of George Russell throughout the race, but he made all the right calls. Mercedes made all the right calls. And in doing so, he managed to get the final position on the podium, just ahead of his rookie teammate, Kimi Antonelli, who was initially given a 5-second penalty, so he dropped down to fifth. But that was after the race rescinded, and he got a promotion back up to fourth. So some excellent points for the Mercedes team. The Mercedes looks quick. We wasn't expecting this coming into the season. Obviously, they'll always, be there or thereabouts, but they looked like probably in this race the second fastest car Coops. What would you think?
Yeah, I could agree with that at the moment. I don't think there's much of a muchness between Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes at the moment. So I wouldn't be surprised if we go to China and Ferrari's second in the pecking
Mm.
order with the second fastest car, and then we go to Japan and it's Red Bull. Even with Williams could be in there. The Alpines are pretty solid looking, and Yeah, Sonoda flinging that the Racing Bulls, newly named Racing Bulls, uh, into fifth on the grid. So there's not much in it. I'm kind of excited to see a dry race just to really see how close we are, because it wasn't. I had a look at the gaps at the end of the race there, and it wasn't really indicative of how the season's going to be. But yeah, Mercedes definitely have something, especially Antonelli getting himself up to fourth place eventually, uh, after a relatively poor qualifying.
Mm.
Uh, and that, I mean, let's not underestimate or understate the conditions. They were tricky. We had
Really tricky.
race winners in the wall. We had world champions in the wall. Uh, so, for Antonelli, the young man, to do that, uh, that's good. And it's maybe Toto was right, and maybe all these haters on Antonelli were, maybe eating some humble pie later on in the year. Uh, that will be quite satisfied to see. Um,
He didn't
and
seem phased throughout the whole week at all, Antonelli. In every interview, he seemed calm. He seemed excited for the race, obviously. It never looked like it was going to phase him. And even just before the race, when he was being interviewed about the conditions, he was like, "I'm excited. This is going to be a great race. I'm really looking forward to it." Whereas he was only one of two rookies that finished the race. He proved that he was definitely worth his weight for the Mercedes team by bringing home those amount of points.
definitely. I mean, he does seem like a very cool and collected young man. What is it, 17? Uh,
Mm.
he's in the record books. I think he's one of the youngest to get points. So
He's
there
the
is a
second. I think he's second youngest because Max Verstappen was the first, wasn't he? I
yeah.
think.
I think he's the youngest Mercedes driver to get points. Uh,
Right.
I think. Uh, so yeah, he's proved so far the reason why. Now let's not get too excited. We all thought Yuki Tsunoda was going to end up the Red Bull after we saw him in the first race at Bahrain a few years back. Look how that ended up.
Mm.
But I think there's politics involved in that, to be honest. Um, so yeah, definitely a very calm and collected and chilled out Toto was probably sleeping after that race once, all the dust settled down and everything calmed down. So, interesting to see how he develops over the season.
Absolutely, me too. Huge surprise coming into the weekend, and after first practice, we saw Carlos Sainz fastest was the Williams car. The Williams car seems to be pretty darn good.
Yeah,
Really exciting to see how well that they've developed that car and how close they are to being competitive. Maybe not quite with the top teams, but they're not too far behind. They're only a couple of tenths down, if anything. And unfortunately for Carlos Sainz, obviously he couldn't keep it on the black stuff throughout the whole race, and obviously ended up having to retire the car due to a crash. But his teammate Alexander Albon came fifth, just behind the two Mercedes, and it was a really strong performance from the whole team. Carlos even was helping make strategic calls from the pit wall to help Albon, telling them when to change the tyres. You're definitely going to need to go onto the intermediates again because that rain is just too much. And it's not going to dry out any very quickly at all. So the tyre to go on. That helped them. The team have acknowledged that Carlos made a big input for the race weekend, and they've got a really strong driver pairing with a really good car. I think they could do well this year.
well, definitely. I mean, it looks like it's between Alpine and them for best of the rest. And, once Carlos Sainz gets himself into, gets him in the groove with that car, they've got a really good driver pairing. Carlos Sainz
Mm.
lost it on the formation lap, but I think it was a clunky upshift that spun the rear wheels at the wrong time, and the back end went.
Mm.
So not necessarily a driver error. Conditions, and maybe it was a software issue with the car itself, or the gearbox. And I mean, it wasn't the only one that had an issue or some sort of issue. I
Mm.
mean, Antonelli, who finished fourth, spun off. Charles Leclerc had a spin. Doohan ended up off, Hadjar ended up off, Lawson ended up retiring, Fernando Alonso lost it. Both the McLarens ended up off. So, they're not the only ones. And, I think they all need to understand that they were just tricky conditions. And I think there's skill, but also an element of luck if you didn't have something going on, some sort of wobble. But yeah, the Williams really look like they're starting to progress somewhere. And I think it's Williams and Aston Martin have already kind of said that they're looking at 2026 already. They've got their base there. So will they maintain this at the start of as the season goes on and other teams develop a wee bit more than they are? Time will tell. But I think they're going to be there or thereabouts. I think we're gone are the days now where we celebrate them getting into Q2 and maybe sneaking a point. The expectation is that they're going to be in the top 10. And it'll be
Yeah.
disappointing the other way around this time.
Yeah, and it's really exciting, as I say. It's been a long time coming, and it's been a sad decline of what once was one of the greatest teams in F1 history. Well, it still is one of the greatest teams in F1 history. Let's be completely honest. But they've had a long period of just really poor performances, really poor cars, and it's really nice to see them coming out of the slump that they had been in. And they couldn't do it with two better drivers, a better team principal. It's just an altogether well-rounded team, I think, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do for the rest of the season. Actually, we had a standout performance from an Aston Martin driver. It just wasn't the Aston Martin driver that we usually expect to see performing quite well. Lance Stroll had a decent race. He's proven yet again that he did or does still deserve a seat on the grid. When you are able to perform to that standard, when you are able to, under the pressures of the mixed conditions, it really does kind of separate the drivers who deserve to be there. And from the performance that he had in Australia, you might think differently, Coops, and I'm happy to hear your opinions. But it seemed like he had a pretty decent race, and he did it through his own skill, really.
Changeable conditions seem to be what Lance Stroll likes. I mean, he had the opportunity a couple of times to win a race. He qualified in pole, I think, because of changeable conditions. But he's just never been able to translate that to an actual win, whether that be just sheer luck with the conditions or something else. But the issue with Lance that I think everyone has, and probably myself, is that the Strolls have basically said that they want to be a championship winning team. Is Lance Stroll a championship winning driver? No. He's a good Grand Prix driver. And yeah, he could end up winning a few Grand Prix here or there and, fight for points regularly. But he's just, I think I've discussed this recently in the podcast as well, that there's just something about a driver that you're like, oh, there's something about him. You can't really explain it. You just kind of know something's going to happen. Everybody knew that Max Verstappen was going to be a championship winner at some point. It was up to the team to provide him with the tools, but he had his tools to do it. There's drivers that have came in and have that something, but it didn't quite work because they ended up at a team at the wrong time. I think Juan Pablo Montoya, if he had got himself in the right machinery, but didn't move to McLaren and stayed at Williams, could have got himself a championship winning team. Because that BMW engine was really good around about that time. And he made a couple of wrong decisions. So yeah, Lance deserves to be on the grid, but this idea that he could be the next championship winner for Aston Martin, that's the fantasy. That's the thing that isn't going to happen. Unless something happens in a similar vein to Jenson Button with the Brawn, where, for 2026, Aston Martin find this golden goose thing that nobody else has thought of, and they are 2 seconds ahead of everybody for the first half of the season. And do you think that in that case, Fernando Alonso is going to allow Lance Stroll to win that championship? No. It doesn't matter who owns the team. That won't happen. So Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
he definitely deserved his seat on the grid. I'm not saying necessarily that he continues to deserve. Nepotism plays a massive part in the fact that he's still on the grid. But what I mean is this performance kind of did prove that, he has got something and he definitely did deserve his chance at one point. Whether he continues to have to deserve that, I probably question myself. But yeah, good performance, changeable conditions. He's proven that he's able to do that from time to time. It's a shame his consistency isn't what it should be at this level of motorsport. I'll tell you whose performance was absolutely standout this weekend, and in a machine that we didn't expect to be performing well at all. That is Nico Hulkenberg in the Kick Sauber. He got that green machine right up there into the points and had a fantastic race weekend. Obviously, again, the changeable conditions. This is what we're going to say throughout the whole podcast, really. The changeable conditions either helped or hindered all the teams there. But, he had to be there or thereabouts to be able to score the points that he did. So, a really nice performance for Nico Hulkenberg, actually scoring more points than the whole Sauber team scored last year. Was that the
yes.
Sauber team or was that was Haas? Yeah, no,
No,
that
no,
was
no.
Sauber. So
Sauber got four all of last year, and they've just got six.
yeah, so completely, blew the point score for the whole team out of the water in a single race with the Kick Sauber team. So, have you got anything to say about Nico Hulkenberg, Coops? Were you impressed, or did you expect it just because of the changeable conditions?
No, I expect it because it's Hulk. So he does. He doesn't get in the top. He doesn't get the podium places. He gets fourth to 10th. He appears and gets in changeable conditions and gets it, or he gets a chance for a podium and ends up in the barrier. So, there was that much going on that I didn't even realize he was up there. But it was the same with I think it was Lance Stroll. It wasn't until after the race I'm like, oh, I didn't realize he got there. Good for
Mm,
Kick Sauber, but it doesn't. It's kind of putting a plaster on a broken arm, or a
mm,
band-aid on a broken arm. Uh, that car's not a good car, and that team are way behind the curve because they're Audi next season, and they've got a
mm.
lot of things to fix and a lot of
But
things to
the
sort out. But the
The
good
weather, the
thing,
weather is the great leveler, though, isn't it? That's why Nico Hulkenberg was where he was because it levels the playing field. Obviously, your aerodynamics aren't as important when it's you know torrential rain, and you've got slippery track conditions. It's not as important to have the best aerodynamic package. Um, you know, so it is what it is. Don't expect them to be there for very long in that position.
well, I mean, what about I have to put a shout out to Gabriel Bortoleto though. I mean, he out qualified Hulkenberg in a car that is very tricky to drive, and he's a rookie.
Mm.
So I think
And he
he's
survived 45 laps.
he did he had a
Uh,
wee whoopsie and fired it into the barrier, but then I mean, who didn't at this race?
mm.
So it'll take a lot of positives from the Grand Prix. In all fairness, go by what he's done. The crash, yeah, it's a pain, but then he's a rookie. They're going to expect that, especially in those conditions that an inch or two off the racing line. It was the last few laps, and you're whipping it into the barrier. But he did. I think he's one that's got to be something that you put him in a Red Bull, you put him in the Mercedes, you put him in
Don't
a
don't give Helmut
decent.
Marko ideas. He'll make the change.
But he won't make the change. I think Sauber have tied him up. I think it'd be very strange in Sauber or Audi to get rid of him for next year, especially when it's a young driver in 1 year in a Sauber. But I think there's something about him that looks quite good. Could beat my words in the next few races, but you know, I think there's
Uh,
something there.
there's definitely something there. Now, a team that I didn't expect to be talking about so late into the podcast is the Scuderia Ferrari team. Now, obviously, they've got a brand spanking new driver in Lewis Hamilton to join in their ranks, but even Charles Leclerc was down there in eighth, and so it's eighth and 10th respectively. It's not where they want to be. They certainly deserved to be higher if you're going off individual performances, especially for Charles Leclerc. He made a couple of good overtakes. It's just they made Ferrari mistakes yet again. Ferrari strategy mistakes. Again, hanging their drivers out to dry and leaving them on the wet compound, the dry compound tyres too late into the stint while the rain was coming down. And the people may say, oh, they took a gamble. It might have paid off. No, they weren't looking to the future. The tyre tracks on the track itself, on the circuit itself, had dried off very slowly throughout the race. I mean, it took 30 laps before there was, dry patches across the track itself. And they were expecting the 2 laps of rain to just dry up in seconds. And the wet tire, the drive tires, sorry, would be sufficient and able to get them to the end of the race. And it was just the completely wrong call. They were not thinking about the future. They weren't thinking about, what's going to happen when the rain stops, but the track doesn't dry. They're going to have to tiptoe around the whole track if they were ever to make it work, and that just wouldn't happen, and they would have lost even more positions. So, to much exasperation from their new driver Lewis Hamilton, and of course their old driver Charles Leclerc, they did make the wrong choice. But you know, Charles did make a couple of good overtakes. I don't think the rain is conducive for well, it doesn't represent the Ferrari's true pace, and I think we'll probably see a bit better performance from them in the upcoming weekend in China.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's much more to say on Ferrari. They did their usual. They Ferrari'd it, and then that's that. What is there to say? They gambled that the way the rain wouldn't be quite as bad as it was. It was worse. They ended up in ninth and was it sixth or seventh? I can't remember. So it is what it is. Or 10th. It was 10th for Hamilton, wasn't it? It wasn't.
It was 8th and 10th, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So, it is what it is for them. I think Lewis will be generally satisfied. Obviously, there'll be things they need to work out on. The relationship's still going there. And there is, as you say, there is pace in that car. They just need to get the opportunity to show it. And Australia was never it was never the race for outright speed. It was the race for being at the right place at the right time. And they were in, as they said on the Sky broadcast, they were in the wrong tyre at the wrong time and then in the right tyre at the wrong time, which put them down the order. So, sometimes fine margins are what it is. And even McLaren, who won the race, there were fine margins. One of their drivers ended up in the grass. So, I don't think it's quite as tragic as some people are trying to make out, or probably Mercedes fans trying to make out. It's almost in the same vein as probably most of Mexico having a laugh at Liam Lawson, and was that a good idea? But let's put that down to the fact that Liam Lawson has never raced in Australia before. So, and the conditions as well caught out a lot of people, as what they mentioned. So, I think Ferrari have got they've got a good foundation. They really need to sort out their strategy calls. To be a champion, you can make these mistakes. Maybe 1 or 2 a season you could get away with because of the amount of races we've got now. But, unfortunately for everybody, Ferrari tend to be quite good at making them quite a lot. So, let's hope
Yes,
they
they
don't.
certainly need to fill that seat with somebody who's less, less mistake prone. Um, uh, it's just one of those things, I guess. The competitiveness between Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton was quite good. It was back and forth in terms of sector times throughout free practice and throughout qualifying. Charles Leclerc, I think, just pipped it, but that's to be expected at this point. I know there's going to be lots of Lewis Hamilton fans that are going to be expecting great things from him, and absolutely, I can't see why he wouldn't have a race win this year. And of course, the car, I think, has got a lot of performance left in it. We're yet to see its true potential. I think the race weekend in China is probably going to suit them a lot better, although I'm not sure about the hardiness of the tire performance underneath the Ferrari. So we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, I think it's a strong foundation. They just need to nip those teething problems. I mean, the radio problems between Lewis Hamilton and his race engineer. It certainly wasn't conversations like Hamilton was used to with Bono. But you know what? I think there's a lot of negative press over that, or at least negative kind of social media interactions about that. I don't think Lewis was being. I think he was being very pleasant, actually, even though he was obviously saying, "Look, guys, don't give me so much information, please." He was using his pleases and thank yous and trying to, yeah, I know, I know what I'm doing here. It was a bit of a Kimi Raikkonen moment, but he didn't say leave me alone. He was like, "Can you leave me alone, please?"
Yeah, but I'm sure
I know what
Charles
I'm doing.
Leclerc said something similar about, I don't need that right now, or
Mm.
something. But the thing is, do you think that Bono and Hamilton had a perfect relationship and conversation at the start of their relationship that they
No,
did when they
absolutely not.
left? So, you know, you're only going to start understanding each other when it gets to the high pressure of a Grand Prix, and you've got to, you know, get the information out there. And I think he said it at the end. We'll go away, we'll debrief, we'll talk about certain things like, look, see, when it comes to this, I don't need that information. See, when it comes to that, I need this type of information. I just
Mm.
need things condensed. And the engineer and Lewis will probably be back in the Maranello, just themselves, more than likely, just discussing, right? Like, okay, so you said I don't need to give you this information. How much do you need? Do you need any
Mm.
information? Do you want a wee bit more? It's a relationship, and anyone who wants to start moaning about it is probably just got something they want to burn against Lewis Hamilton. Because let's face it doesn't matter what Lewis Hamilton's going to do, somebody will moan about it. I'm surprised they haven't moaned that it's the wrong colour of yellow in his helmet or something, because that's just what they're going to do. And it doesn't matter what you say to them, they're not going to change. So, the relationship between Hamilton and Ferrari will sort itself out. And a
Yeah.
nice wee neat thing that I seen online was that Ferrari incorporated Lewis Hamilton's logo on the steering wheel, which I thought was kind of cool. The wee screen on the steering wheel, when it plugs on, it's going to be logo. It's quite smart. Anyway, but yeah,
Yeah, that
it's only
relationship
going
will
to get
just
better.
get better, better.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and as I think he was respectful of him, of the engineer. There was nothing untoward about it. I don't think they were bickering. I just think it was, two people that have worked historically differently to each other, trying to find a middle ground where they can communicate exactly what each person needs, really,
Mhm.
and that will progress as the season progresses too. Another kind of radio call that's been getting a bit of attention on social media is the fact that McLaren told Oscar Piastri to hold station while they were going through the back markers. Now, obviously, the first race of the season, people are going to jump on that and say, well, why are they telling them to hold station at this point in the season? It's so early. Let them compete, and then make those sorts of decisions later in the year. There'll always be criticisms aimed at Formula One team principals, engineers, and strategists. But it was the right call. I'm going to say it right here, right now. It was absolutely the right call. They were in traffic. The rain was terrible. The track was slippery. Wait until you can bypass all of those and then have a clean fight. Because what's better, having two cars that finish, obviously in the points, or one, two yeah, on the track, obviously is preferable, or having an accident because you're trying to overtake a back marker, but also your teammate at the same time going three wide into a corner that doesn't accept three cars width. What's your kind of opinions on that? Are you kind of with me in this kind of team orders that kind of went on over the weekend here?
Well, yeah, of course it did. And I mean, it was on the broadcast. The whole position till we're past the back markers. Then Zach Brown was on Sky feed, and they said no, they're free to race. Uh, Twitter being Twitter, or X, has people tweeting and saying, that's mad what McLaren have done. And it's like they're trying to create a Drive to Survive style, not real narrative, because of Piastri and Norris, and for some reason we don't like Norris anymore, and that's the royal we, not me. Uh, so
Mm.
you know, I kind of done with it. Like, it wasn't like they hid it. They said to them what the deal was. They told them they could race, and they would have been allowed to race if the opportunity came up. I'm sure Piastri, if he was there, would have had a couple of moments to see what he could do. And then as we got to near the end of the race, no doubt they would have been told to hold station, regardless of whether it was Norris at front and Piastri in front. Because let's face it, the team are looking for the Constructors' Championship. Everyone needs to understand this. The team want Constructors because that's where the money is, not the drivers.
Yeah.
The drivers is a trophy and an ego boost, that's it. It's got nothing to do with the team. The team love it because they can put it on their marketing stuff, and Lando Norris can then go to the team and go, I want more millions of pounds, or Oscar Piastri. But the money that is needed to run the team comes from constructors. That's it. Every team does the same.
Absolutely.
It's got nothing to do with any kind of thing about holding Piastri back because of Norris. It's not like that. And no, there wasn't team orders in the first race, and it wasn't done on purpose at Oscar Piastri's home race either, just to twist the knife in. Let's just put that straight in the bin, please. It was just
Some people,
circumstance.
some people have been saying that obviously if he was allowed to get past and attack Lando, he may not have made that decision, that mistake early on, and he could have controlled it out of the corner. But this is like pie in the sky fishing, kind of for clutching at straws, basically. I think the rain would have still come at that corner. They would have still been the first to arrive at that corner with the rain and on slicks. So there probably would have been some driving wide on those corners anyway, regardless of whether it was in P1 or P2 at the time.
I mean, and if I was a talented actor, I'd be winning an Oscar. It's all just pie in the sky, what if stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
this is just
exactly.
how it is. It's like, yeah, what if this, what if that? And, like, what if Piastri stayed at Alpine? Would he still be there? It's not a thing. Like, what happened, happened. And,
Mm,
like, like, there's just a subset of the Formula One fandom that just want to create something. And it's like,
Drama and criticisms, definitely.
enjoy the sport, get the talking points of things that actually happened in the right context, and move on. Let's not create
Mm.
something that isn't true and then gatekeep it when somebody call you out and go, actually, that's not what we said. So, yeah.
Oh, as an aside, I'm not obviously the biggest fan of Drive to Survive, but I found a perfect way of watching Drive to Survive, and
Well, with the
that's
screen turned off.
I actually I watched it on my phone. I've got quite a large screen phone, so it's all right. You get to see quite a bit. But then on a mobile app, you can speed up an episode. So I played it at literally 1.5 speed, and I got the whole 10 episodes done in less than 5 hours. So it was a lot quicker to watch. Everyone waddles around like penguins because it's all sped up and it looks quite funny. You still get to see the action that you need to see, and it kind of glosses over any over exaggerated drama as well. So you don't really get kind of roped into all the this fictionalized drama that they try to bring you into. So it kind of got me in the mood for the season. It was a way of watching the Drive to Survive season to see kind of what goes on. And a couple of the interviews are quite good. But other than that, I don't think I'd watch it at normal speed in the future because I just found that the best way to watch it.
I just get angry by it now. Like, I think did not say they were going to make it more documentary style, and then they haven't bothered, and they've actually made it
Mm.
more dramatized now than it is.
Yeah, I mean, intersplicing different, races in the same story that they're telling at the time.
aye.
Max in Miami versus Max in, Austria, Max in blah blah blah, blah. Different caps he's wearing in different times, all spliced together to make it look like it's the same day, but it was just, yeah. But you miss that if you have it on 1.5 speed. For some reason, I can't get it 1.5 speed on my TV, so it has to be watched on your mobile phone at 1.5 speed. And it kind of got me in the mood for the season
You
coming
know,
into obviously
the
2025.
I get why Drive to Survive is about it. I understand it, and I understand that it's got Formula One has got bigger because of Drive to Survive. But there's ways to
Hmm.
put an engaging, really properly story-driven, narrative-style documentary without fictionalizing events and altering history or retconning it. They're just not mentioning things that are pretty
Yeah.
pertinent to the season. I don't think Russell's disqualification in Belgium was actually mentioned, as far as I've heard. I haven't watched
Mm.
it. This is just what I've seen on Twitter and
There's
on the
so many
socials.
stories that they miss from the year.
You
Definitely.
know,
So many
the
stories they miss.
Formula Two, I think, had a really good documentary thing that was on the F1 TV. You could get for free if you subscribed, or the basics. And it was very documentary-esque discussions about the races, and it was, I think it was talking about the year, the season that Anton Hubert passed, and there was some
Mm.
quite emotional, touching moments, and it was engaging. It was, educational. It had its narratives, it had its storylines, it had its action, but they weren't taken out of context, and they weren't blown
Mm.
up, and they weren't made up to turn into something. It was just a really good way of going, this is what happened in the year. This is what the people felt. This is how upset we all were. This is how tangible that season was because of the death of Anton. Um, and it was just a really nice way to do it.
Mm.
And Netflix just want to turn it into, it's like, for me now, I haven't watched Drive to Survive. I have no urge anymore to watch it. It feels like it should have the blurb saying that all characters named in this are fictional, and it's a coincidence that they're named after people, and blah blah blah.
I
That
wonder if they're going to
that
do
kind of thing.
a special Drive to Survive F1 film season where you get to see Sonny. What's his name what's Brad Pitt's name? Sonny something.
Yeah,
I can't remember. Whether they're going to throw him into the Drive to Survive to give a special kind of movie version of the series. That'd be quite funny,
well, I mean,
actually, I think.
they had a TV series about Ayrton Senna, and they had a race on Netflix again, and he was racing, was it Snetterton or Alton Park, or a race in UK, but in the background there were snow-covered Alps or snow-covered mountains, which don't exist in the actual track. And
Mm.
it kind of just, for someone who knows a bit about Formula One and wanting to see okay, it's slightly dramatized story about Senna, and you see a screenshot and it's got the track with these mountains in the background, you know straight away it's not a thing. It just takes you out of it. And I haven't watched it basically because of that. And
I haven't watched it yet either, and I swore I was going to be one of the first people to watch it, and I just haven't got around to it. I'm not excited by it after I've
yeah,
seen kind of trailers and stuff like that. So
yeah. I mean, I'll still,
that might be a shame.
I'll go to the cinema to watch the Formula One movie, because the Formula One movie it doesn't try and kid on it's something it's not. It's a film
Mm.
based around
Yeah,
Formula One, and it's got Brad Pitt in it. It looks like
a
it's a decent action.
61-year-old driver or whatever.
It's got a bit of fun. It's got a bit of fun. It's fictionalized. It's having a laugh. People who go there and say that's not a good representation of Formula One, yeah, because it's a goddamn movie. Like, seriously, does anybody watch Armageddon and think that's not a good way of astronauts going on to an asteroid? Because it's a movie.
Mm.
Let's chill,
Mm.
man. But Drive to Survive, my problem is it tries to make it out to be a documentary when it's not. And
Mm.
if it just came out and kind of leaned into the fact that it wasn't a documentary, it was a bit more dramatized, fine. But I would like it to be more documentary. But Drive
Mm.
to Survive's not aimed for people like us. It's aimed for entry level people to get an idea of what the sport could be like, and and then they start finding where they want to be. So yeah,
Yeah.
it is what it is. Drive to Survive. It's got its niche. There's people that like it. Cool. Once they've watched it, come on over. We'll to show you what actual Formula One is like. It's not that. It's this. And
Anyway, that was an aside. That was an aside. Let's get back to the race review. I know we do these asides all the time. If you're new to the podcast, we do go off on slight different tangents. But we don't really need to speak about every single team, actually. The one team I do want to speak about out of the ones we've got left is the Haas. And they just seem to have gone backwards.
Hmm.
That team does not look good. That car does not look good. Um, I'm just not impressed in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't look like they brought the performance that they even had in the winter test. they're slower than they were in the winter test. I think there was something to do with the aero package, and then kind of really kind of bolting down um, the aero, and obviously it made a whole lot of difference, but in the wrong way, and made it a lot more kind of draggy and just horrible to drive.
Yeah, it's a bit of a heap at the minute. Oliver
Mm.
Bearman had a horrible weekend, crashed, then didn't drive the next free practice, crashed again, got the car out to drive round to start his final lap, gearbox gubbed, came out, and then was at the back and really didn't do much.
But he
In
finished.
fairness, he's one of only two rookies to finish. So,
Exactly.
he gets points, not real points, but he gets points for
Like,
that.
yeah,
Uh,
metaphorical points.
yes. But yeah, I mean, Haas will do what Haas do. They'll either stay round about the back with Sauber or they'll slowly move up. It's a shame because they seem to have got themselves into a decent position last year, and I was
Mm.
quite excited for an Ocon Bearman lineup. And if they're going to be given some really poor tools to work with, it's going to be one of those. They're going to be they could be the underwhelming team of the year. When we come to the end of the year and look back over the season. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, let's hope that they get their stuff in order for the next over the next few races. We've got, I think it's like 5 races in 6 weeks to start off the season. So they're
Yum,
coming,
yum.
they're coming a bit thick and fast. So hopefully they can
Definitely.
get something somewhere, and get back in and amongst the points at least.
Yeah, exactly. Well, looking forward to the weekend then. We are heading to China. I'm going to read the vital statistics of China, the Chinese Grand Prix. Um, we are at the Shanghai International Circuit. Our first Grand Prix there was in 2004. It's been off and on actually. It's had a couple of years off, obviously due throughout the COVID times, and we were first back last year after a 3-year hiatus. We're going to have 56 laps around a circuit length of 5.451 kilometers, which means the total race distance is 305.066 kilometers. The lap record is still held by none other than Michael Schumacher. He lapped it in 1 minute 32.238 seconds, and he did that in a 2004 Ferrari. Um, it's a sprint race weekend, actually, this weekend, which is either exciting or boring, depending on your stance on sprint races. Um, and that means we're going to get, obviously, 4 sessions that are competitive. So that's something to be excited about, I think. I like the new format. I'm going to rephrase that. This format of sprint race weekend is the better format of sprint race weekend after a couple of years of trying a couple of different things that didn't quite work. Am I still fully convinced of the sprint race? I'm still on the fence. The first few years I was nah, it doesn't add anything to the weekend. Last year, you know what, I started to enjoy it a little bit, and I saw the benefit, obviously, from a commercial aspect, and from the fans at the track as well. And so, yeah, this is the first sprint of, is it 8 this year that we've got?
Oh, I don't know. I thought it was
It
just
was
six.
six.
I would be
It was
surprised if
six
it's
last year.
eight.
Had they increased it? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not
We'll
sure.
Google that.
Yeah, we'll check it. But uh, yeah, like the sprint race is. I think sprint qualifying or one of them's on at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Mm.
No, I'll check it later. I watch the qualifying, and I'll watch the race live because that's the thing. Sprints for me just. I don't know what I just don't know what they do other than to bring in more money and or opportunities for promoters to charge more money because you've got a race uh, on the Saturday or in qualifying on the Saturday, so that gives them action, as they say.
Mm.
Uh, I don't know. I'm a purist. I quite like the fact that the race was the Sunday and that's what you got. Now we've got this preview of coming events thing on the Saturday, and you know because of the current setup, none of the drivers will race to the full potential, because if they bin the car, then they're not going to get the car properly set up in time for qualifying for the actual race. And I mean, they did try and change it this season before last, where it was sprint qualifying, sprint race on a sprint Saturday. What they then realised was that your purists just didn't watch the Saturday. Just waited to the Grand Prix on Sunday, watched qualifying Friday, Grand Prix Sunday, had a Saturday off to be stuck, going shopping or whatever they did. They've kind of tried to mix it up a wee bit. So yeah, yeah, they're here. They're not going anywhere. I hope that they're never going to be sprint races at every single Grand Prix, because that would get tiring really, really quickly. I think, yeah, you have a handful here or there. Some circuits seem to be more in tune to the idea. I think it's Sao Paulo. I think they've pretty much had a sprint race throughout the whole time we've had sprint races, and that's a short, sharp. That can bring a wee bit of excitement, but yeah, no, it's not really. I've never been keen on them. There might be isolated moments in a sprint race where I'm like, oh, it's quite a good wee sprint race, actually, quite surprised. But in general, I just don't like I just don't like the idea.
Mm. No, I think I'm looking forward to it. It's just more on track action, and I quite like that. Like my purist inside me says it's probably not needed. But more racing is more racing, and after a hiatus over the winter, it's just nice to get more on track, competitive action rather than three what can be potentially quite boring free practice sessions from a normal race weekend. The problem is, obviously, we've got six rookies that probably haven't raced in a Formula One car around Shanghai. Well, definitely haven't, because that's why they're rookies. So that's going to be brand new to them. They're going to have one practice session to get kind of used to it. And they're going to go straight into a qualifying session. That's something exciting to kind of see how they kind of hang on to the pressure, I guess, of only having one free practice session. It's going to be very warm. Well, not very warm. It's going to be very dry, sorry, with fairly warm temperatures for China. So it's going to be a completely different kind of atmosphere and kind of driving style at the race weekend. So we can expect to see the true potential of the cars. Hopefully, they'll kind of reveal the real pecking order, as it obviously was mixed conditions in Australia. So nice to see a dry race. Nice to see, where the cars really sit on a fairly high downforce, medium to high downforce track. It's got some good long straights, some really tight, twisty corners. It's really tough on tyres, so I think it will show McLaren's true pace and true kind of how clear they are off into the distance, and how strong that car is. There's one thing that a directive that wasn't supposed to be coming in until Spain, and that's the flexible rear wing. They were FIA were saying that they were allowing until Spain for teams to correct the flexibility of the rear wing. They've now changed it to Shanghai, so they're going to have to beat tolerances by Shanghai, which is obviously this race. It's a very strange time to introduce that rule change when they said that the teams had until Spain to do that.
I think that was the front
When
wing, but it's a weird thing. So at first they weren't going to do anything. Then they went, we'll monitor it. Then they put these cameras on the rear wings, and whatever the information they got from, I think, McLaren and a couple other cars during Australia, they went, we're changing it for China. So
Mm,
clearly, the things that these teams are doing are not necessarily illegal, but it's like the wording, it's not in the spirit of the rules, or
mm,
that those particular, you know, innovations, they're giving them a slight advantage, but it's not really enough of an advantage to break a rule. There's because things are changed and altered, and wordings of rules are not quite as black and white because they can't be. So,
mm.
we're not saying that McLaren, Ferrari are, I think there's three or four teams that are really good at understanding the flexibilities and have been able to, adapt their body work to take that in. Unnecessarily
But it
cheap,
was
But
It's strange time to introduce it though on a back-to-back weekend when they can't fly other parts out. But they were talking to team principals such as Andrea Stella. He said he wasn't concerned about being able to meet the new requirement sooner
well,
in
they
than was
changed
expected originally.
they changed the rules last season, or they made it tighter, or McLaren agreed, with the FIA. Look, right, we'll back it off. Unofficially, it was kind of an informal chat, like, don't you know? And they're like, all right, okay, fine. I mean, did it change the pecking order much then? No, not
Mm.
really. Will they make it a
They're
wee
just
bit
incremental
closer?
things that.
Yeah, it might make it a wee bit closer. Red Bull might be a tenth or two closer, but is it really going to change everything? Is McLaren going to fall back to eighth and ninth and third or
Mm,
fourth? No.
no.
The McLaren car is the sum of all its parts. It's not the flexi rear wing that's put it to the front.
If
So
that's not a double diffuser type innovation
no,
that kind of stole the show,
100% is not.
uh, it's very much a small kind of cog in a very large kind of engine for definite. But it's no surprise that it's Red Bull pushing through with that story and obviously getting their way with the FIA. They have been strong opponents to the flexibility of those parts on their competitors' cars, and it just sounds like they've got their own way a little bit sooner than was originally planned. And the teams have just got to adjust it a lot quicker and get those parts either in China or hopefully they've got ways to beat the tolerance tests to kind of appease the FIA sooner than their original plan of it being in Spain. Let's make our predictions then, based upon our knowledge of the cars so far, which is very, very little at the moment, and I guess especially after the changeable conditions in Australia. I want a qualifying, a fastest qualifier for the sprint race. I want a sprint race winner, second, third, and I want a fastest qualifier for the race, and then a first, second, and third, and a bold prediction for the weekend. Coops, that's lots of predictions to make.
I know. At this time, really. Sake. Right, okay.
We haven't got lots of information to draw from, so it can be just plucked from the air. It could be something that you'd like to happen. It could be something that you think will happen. It could just be something fun.
Right. Pole position for the sprint, Leclerc.
Okay.
Top three for the sprint will be Piastri, Norris, Hamilton.
Okay.
Uh, Pole position for the race will be Norris. And I think it'll be Norris, Piastri, Antonelli. Let's go with that. And that's my bold prediction as well. We'll go with Antonelli in a podium.
Okay, cool. I'm going to say fastest qualifier for the sprint will be, let's say, I'm going to say Charles Leclerc as well. Actually, I was going to say something really out there, but no, I'll be a bit more realistic. I'm going to say Charles Leclerc. I'll say the winner of the sprint will be Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, and Max Verstappen. Top three. I think the fastest qualifier for the race will be Oscar Piastri, and I think the winner of the race will be Oscar Piastri with a Lando Norris second and a Charles Leclerc third. My bold prediction will be that Isaac Hadjar will finish a race. That's a good prediction, I hope. I hope that's a good
It's a
prediction.
good
I hope.
car.
Yeah,
Uh,
it did seem pretty decent.
so before we go, I posted on Facebook a rate the Australian Grand Prix. So I'm going to do this after every race, and then I'll give
Right.
you the consensus at the end of the season of which was the most exciting and most boring race out of all of them. So
Okay.
we've got three reacts. This is a Facebook only thing. You've got good slash classic, okay and meh, and boring, hated it. That's your three options. Out of 1,300 votes, 1,000 of them went for a classic and good.
Nice.
266 went, it was all right. and 49 people said it was boring. I don't know what they were watching. I think they forgot to turn off the TV, or just slept in. We
So
did have
Australia is officially the
a
most
classic,
exciting race of the season, but also the most boring race of the season.
yeah, and also the most meh. I will shout out to the 30 odd people that don't know how to react on Facebook when I give them three options. 25 gave it the thumbs up, that wasn't an option. 19 gave it a heart, again, wasn't an option. Six people laughed at it, fair enough. And one person was angry, probably somebody from the Tifosi. Uh, so yeah, it's now in the good column. So for China, it's got a pretty decent level to
Compete against.
to compete against. Yeah, some varying comments as well about somebody asked where the V10s are. I don't know. Go and look in your garage. Not sure what that means. Uh, some people saying it was boring and follow the leader, but isn't Formula One follow the leader anyway? You know, I mean,
It it
uh,
wasn't an exciting race for overtakes, but it was an exciting race for many other things, I think. That's how I kind of draw the conclusion. And I think that's probably a testament to newer fans versus older fans. Older fans know that some races are like that, and the entertainment is kind of found elsewhere within the race. Albert Park has never been a race that kind of gives you loads of overtaking anyway. We're just happy that F1's back and we get to see a race. So it's never the most exciting race of the season. But I think this was a fairly decent kind of introduction to 2025. But because of many other things, many other factors that were at play, we got to witness you know, quite a bit of action, albeit cars coming off because of the weather.
yep. I mean, but as you say, Formula One will have races that will start, aka Monaco, and finish almost exactly the same. It's done it since I started watching it, and we're talking way back in 1992. So, you get some that are classics, you get ones that are good, you get the French Grand Prix from a few years ago where, I put it on the radio and didn't miss anything. So,
Mm.
and the highlights showed every single car going into the pits in full and the highlight show. Yeah. So that's the reason why we're not there anymore. So, but it happens, we're going to have classics. China's not going to live up to Australia. It might be decent. There'll be questions, there'll be discussion points as ever, but it won't. It just won't. We won't get that. And if we do get that,
You can overtake at China. The 53 overtakes last year throughout the whole race. So you can overtake in China.
you
There will
know,
be overtakes on track and there will be on-track action. It won't be the same as Australia because the weather won't be changeable. Hopefully, we'll get a dry race and we'll get to see the pecking order and hopefully see who really is in the fastest car this year. So I think there are exciting points to kind of to
I mean,
tune
there's
into.
there's exciting things to see, and I think because it's so early in the season with what seems to be a quite closed up grid, but it's this is going to be the story for the full season. There's
Hmm.
there's there's going to be a storyline throughout the full season. Is Hamilton going to develop well with Ferrari? Is Antonelli as good as everyone said? Is Norris got it in him to lead a championship and win a championship? Is Verstappen going
Hmm.
to steal it? Is Piastri and Norris going to stay friends by the end of the season? Is George Russell going to get up there? He seems to just quietly get on about his work and then suddenly appears third. Where the fuck did he come from? It's that sort of thing.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of things still to see. I just don't think that people are going to respond to it like they did with Australia. And again, that could be because it's the second race and Australia's the first race and we'll find about it back. So yeah, but it's still going to be fun and we're still going to watch it and we're still going to talk about it because that's what we do.
That is what we do, indeed. And that's a good place to end the podcast today. We hope you enjoy the race weekend in China. We'll be back, of course, next week to digest all the occurrences and everything that happens at the Shanghai circuit. We hope you come and tune in and join us. You can join us also on our social platforms. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all at the handle at Join EF1, apart from TikTok, which is at EF1 Official. And of course, we'd love it if you hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast streaming service to get all of our latest podcasts in your earlobes as soon as they drop. Please visit the website www.everythingf1.com to read articles on a daily basis from stories from around the F1 grid, the F2 grid, F3, FE. There's many seasons coming on. We've even got the Formula One Academy that's starting at this weekend. So there's lots of different bits of news for you to check out on our website where you can kind of go over there and keep up to date. Also visit our website. Also visit our sponsors website, theraceworks.com, where you can find merchandise from all the teams across the grid and some teams that aren't even on the grid from FE, from different motorsports, and get yourself a 10% discount by using the discount code EF1 at checkout. That's all from me, James Tiller, and of course my co-presenter Jamie Cooper. Thanks, Coops.
Thank you.
We'll be here next week to review the Chinese Grand Prix. Bye bye. See you then.
Bye.